Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to CIFAL Lebanon. Today's webinar is the pilot learning program of CIFAL Lebanon and the first of many joint initiatives with Silay Institute. To share with you, CIFAL Lebanon is a UNITAR accredited training center, one of the 31 select centers across the globe, tasked to enhance capacity building and training amongst leaders and communities towards sustainable development. There is a lot of learning in store today, and I see a lot of our students and officials from Silay Institute. There is indeed an exciting afternoon ahead of us. So let us begin our program and hear some opening remarks from our esteemed Executive Director, Mr. James Donovan. But before we begin, let me remind you of some house rules. So please, everyone, turn off notification alerts on your devices. Make sure that your mics are off. Please input participant names in your Zoom codes in your Zoom ID so we can properly identify you. Also, please use the raise hand button function of the Zoom should you have any questions. And for questions, we have an opportunity later for our students to participate as we have a Q&A portion. Lastly, we remind you to take note of the surveys and feedback form that we will share later. So let's begin. To introduce our Executive Director, we have Ms. Bushra Ilmas.
Thank you so much for this warm welcome, Attorney Corina. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest. Mr. James Donovan is the founder and chairman of Global CEO Alliance, the nonprofit organization hosting CIFAL Lebanon. He is the current chairman and executive director of the center. James has more than 25 years of investment banking and entrepreneurial leadership experience. His expertise are in the areas of sustainability, healthcare, education, technology, and data management. He is the co-founder and group CEO of ADEC Innovations, a global enterprise focusing on impact investing and sustainability. He redefines and delivers innovative environmental, social, and governance solutions to Fortune 1000 corporations. Integrating big data expertise into ESG solutions, his companies have developed some of the most advanced applications that promote ethical and sustainable practices in the corporate world, alongside financial returns. James is also a sustainable development advocate. He works closely with the United Nations South-South Cooperation and the UN Environment Program on various programs, initiatives, and publications focusing on ESG, sustainability, and climate change. He was awarded the 2014 United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation Visionary Awardee and is the coordinating lead author of the Data and Knowledge chapter of the UNEP 6th edition of the Global Environment Outlook 6. Sir Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brucer. Ladies and gentlemen, and valued students of Silay Institute, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this insightful training webinar on environment, social, and governance, ESG principles, and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. I am very honored to be before you today as the Executive Director of CIFAL Lebanon. And it is my great privilege to welcome each and every one of you to this important event. Before we delve into the rich content planned for you today, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone at the Silay Institute for their collaboration with us in organizing this learning event. Silay Institute's commitment to fostering knowledge, growth, and a positive change aligns seamlessly with our mission at CIFAL Lebanon. Together, we aim to provide valuable insights and tools to navigate the complex landscape of sustainability. In the world we're facing today, where increasingly environment challenges, social disparities, and governance complexities, it has become imperative for each and every one of us, individuals, organizations alike, to grasp the significance of ESG and its intersection with the SDGs. Today's training webinar is not just an educational event, it's a stepping stone towards a more sustainable, resilient future. I want to express my gratitude for each and every one of you for joining us today on this journey. Your commitment to expanding your understanding of these crucial topics demonstrates a shared vision for a better world where sustainable practices are at the core of all of our decisions. We're not there yet, but with this webinar, we will explore the fundamentals of ESG and its interconnectedness with the principles of SDGs and the practical applications that can drive positive change for all of us. I encourage each and every one of you to actively engage, ask questions, participate in the discussions. This is our opportunity for collective learning and collaboration. Once again, thank you to the Silay Institute for their collaboration, and I thank each and every one of the participants for your enthusiasm and commitment towards sustainable development in each of our communities. Let us make the most of this learning experience and work together towards a more sustainable and equitable future. I'd like to just say to Silay Institute on its 99th year, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Jim. Thank you for that opening remarks. Indeed, there's so much for our students, the youth of today, to learn about ESG and the Sustainable Development Goals. We thank Silay Institute again for receiving us, and to hear a few words from this esteemed institution, may we call on the school director, Ms. Florcelita Zamora.
Thank you, Attorney. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Sir Jim. When we were requested to speak in behalf of Silay Institute, I was really grateful, and I am filled with thankfulness. For these kind of events are really what we need to move forward in achieving our goals, which are anchored on the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Through this webinar, we believe that it will bring us forth and highlight those which we can, which we need in the Sustainable Development Goals that we have for Silay Institute. We are very much attuned and so very much fortunate for you to partner with us. Thank you, CIFAL Lebanon, for considering Silay Institute as a partner in this endeavor. We are so glad that we are looking forward to work with you in all the projects that you have in CIFAL Lebanon, which are all anchored on the environment and sustainable governance. These are really what we need in our school right now. Having mentioned that we are on our 99th year and moving on to our centennial year, we are still looking forward to more projects to prove that we can all still be sustainable and to prove our love for our environment. We are committed to move forward and engage ourselves in all the projects that you have at CIFAL Lebanon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zamora, and we're excited to see these projects come to fruition. So now, to officially begin, may we call on Ms. Bushra Yilmaz to tell us more about the center, its vision, mission, and planned activities for 2024.
Thank you so much, Attorney Karina. Good afternoon again, and thank you for joining us today for this insightful training webinar on environmental, social, and governance principles and the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, I'm delivering these remarks on behalf of Sir Jim, we'll just delve right into it. Before we delve into the rich content planned for today, we'd like to show a video explaining CIFAL Lebanon. Together, we aim to provide you with valuable insights and tools to navigate the complex landscape of sustainability. Apologies. As we gather here today, our world faces unprecedented challenges from environmental degradation to social inequality and governance issues. At CIFAL Lebanon, we recognize the urgency of addressing these challenges, and our commitment to sustainable development remains unwavering. To start us off, let me introduce CIFAL Lebanon to you through this video.
Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends, and delegates, I'm Jim Donovan. Welcome to Lebanon.
Established in 2023, CIFAL Lebanon is hosted by the Global CEO Alliance. Located in Beirut, Lebanon, the center's mission is to empower individuals, communities, and organizations with the knowledge, skills, and resources needed to drive sustainable development. In the heart of the Middle East, Lebanon stands at a crossroads, navigating the complex landscape of sustainable development goals, or the SDGs. Overcoming political turbulence, economic challenges, and the devastating impact of the Beirut explosion, Lebanon has shown resilience. Initiatives to enhance education access, improve healthcare, and promote gender equality have shown progress. Yet, the journey towards achieving the SDGs remains an uphill battle. From capacity building to resilient cities, Lebanon faces multifaceted challenges that demand a collaborative and concerted effort. In the pursuit of this sustainable future for Lebanon, the spotlight falls on the pivotal role of Sustainable Development Goal 17, Partnerships for the Goals. This critical goal underscores the paramount importance of cross-sector collaboration in overcoming the financial and developmental challenges that loom large. Lebanon, at the crossroads of economic adversity and societal rebuilding, stands to benefit immensely from unified efforts. Together, let us amplify our commitment, support one another, and pave the way for a brighter, more sustainable future for Lebanon, ensuring that no one is left behind. Join us at CIFAL Lebanon to bring about this change through collaborative action.
Well, that is the mission, vision, and objectives of CIFAL Lebanon. At its core, CIFAL Lebanon is part of a global CIFAL network. It's one of the 31 CIFAL centers around the world and the first one in Lebanon. Our mission is not an easy one. CIFAL Lebanon plays a vital role in promoting economic development, sustainable environmental policies, and socioeconomic growth in Lebanon and beyond. We strive to empower individuals, communities, and organizations with the knowledge, skills, and resources needed to drive sustainable development. Through training programs like this one, capacity building initiatives, and collaborative partnerships, we aim to promote inclusive growth and contribute to the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. For our planned activities for 2024, we aim to deliver capacity building and training programs both in-country and globally. Our programs aim to achieve specific sustainable development goals. In particular, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, and SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. We are targeting, apologies. We're targeting around 1,900 beneficiaries in country and grow this exponentially through a global audience. For in-country programs, we aim to promote sustained and inclusive economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. As you know, Lebanon remains host to over 1.5 million refugees, highest number per capita of any country. We have designed an English masterclass program for the benefit of public university students in Lebanon and countries with displaced employable migrants and refugees. This is to build their English proficiency and prepare them for employment opportunities and jobs for future. We also aim to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable by building local capacity in local planning, data management, and alignment with global SDG reporting frameworks for cities and SDGs. For our global programs, we aim to disseminate best practice and build capacity on responsible sourcing, ESG measurement frameworks, and sustainability reporting. In summary, these are our planned activities for 2024. We're excited to share with you our programs on English proficiency, SDG cities, and ESG training series for various audiences. And today we start off with our Introduction to ESG and SDGs course designed for the youth. By delivering ESG education specifically designed for you, we laid a foundation for ensuring that as leaders, you as leaders, innovators, and citizens of tomorrow possess the knowledge, mindset, and skills necessary to confront the challenges of a rapidly changing world and to contribute to a more sustainable future.
Thank you, Ms. Bushra. Thank you for that very informative presentation on CIFAL Lebanon. I'm sure our students are starting to learn more about our center and the programs we have in store for them. So please watch out for these programs. As we witnessed in the presentation, CIFAL Lebanon is more than just an organization. It's a visionary initiative striving to bridge the capacity building gap in Lebanon and beyond. Through education, collaboration, and informed action, CIFAL Lebanon aspires to build a resilient and sustainable future for all. Once again, thank you, Bushra. Now, without further ado, let us continue. I am thrilled to introduce our main speaker. Ms. Michelle Tan is a certified sustainability reporting specialist on GRI and TFCD framework and is a leading ADEC Innovations research and development programs with the United Nations and SDGs. Her publications around ESG includes Global Environment Outlook 6, UNEP Frontiers Report, and Emissions Gap Report on UNEP. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Michelle Tan, Managing Director of CIFAL Lebanon.
Thank you, Attorney Karina. I'll be sharing my screen. Is the presentation showing clearly on your end? Thank you. So, good afternoon, dear students and partners from Silay Institute. And it is my pleasure to be delivering the first webinar of CIFAL Lebanon's Environmental, Social, and Governance, or ESG Capacity Building Series, commencing with the Youth and Students track. And I hope that after today's session, you will have a better understanding of what ESG means, what the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDG, means, and why does it even matter? Why are we all here in this presentation? So, CIFAL Lebanon designed this module so different sectors of society can gain a better understanding of ESG and its factors, and how to adopt relevant frameworks and guidelines for companies and organizations, and also for students who want to become sustainability professionals in the future, can manage ESG impacts effectively and contribute to a more responsible and resilient economy. Our goal in CIFAL Lebanon is clear, and that is to provide a platform for sharing knowledge and experience related to ESG and how it is being practiced. Next is to create a community of practitioners, researchers, and educators who are interested in ESG. And we are so thankful for Silay Institute for being the partner of CIFAL Lebanon in this activity. And we also want to provide our audience practical information, tools, and how to measure ESG and manage ESG factors, and insight how to act upon it. That's more important. And we also hope that this activity will foster collaboration among our partners to further advance ESG practice and its adoption. So today we have a robust set of presentation and activities and session for you. We will learn about ESG, SDG, and its value proposition. Then we're going to have a deep dive on ESG, the E factor of ESG, which is the environmental factor, the S on ESG, which are the social factors, and G on ESG, which are the governance factors. We are also going to learn about the different mandatory and voluntary reporting on ESG and some common guiding frameworks used in measuring and managing ESG factors and its impact to one's organization, internally and externally. You will also be seeing some practical applications and case studies to help you better understand the risks and opportunities of ESG management.
Thank you, Ms. Mick. Before we let our students get more information about ESG, let's see what they know to begin with about ESG and SDGs. So before we get all this information in store for us, kindly check the QR code on the screen, and we would like to do a quick poll, a survey amongst our students. Kindly scan the QR code. So we ask everyone to scan the QR code. I can hear everyone, and please answer the questions that flash in your screen. So please type in what comes to mind when you hear the words ESG and SDG. So we will show the answers later. So we will compare later your understanding before the start of the program of what ESG and SDG means. Now I'll turn you back to Ms. Michelle Tan.
Thank you. I'm excited to see what would be the results. So we'll share the results later. So before we really deep dive into the session, I would like to start our discussion on what we at CIFAL Lebanon believes. We believe that every organization and everyone creates an ESG impact, both positive and negative, intended and unintended. I would like to pause a bit and let that sink in and ask ourselves, what are the impacts we are generating towards the environment and towards our community? So let's start. Our goal for today is by the end of the session, you will be able to first define ESG and the SDGs, communicate the foundations of SDG and ESG, key concept and practices related to sustainable and responsible business practice, and be able to describe the correlation between ESG and the SDGs and understand its use case and practical implementation on different sectors. I'm sure once you all graduate, you will be working in different sectors. And I hope this session would be able to allow you to have an understanding on how to apply these methods and theories on your respective organization. So what is ESG? ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. The E represents the environmental dimension of the SDG and its components such as water, energy consumption, the waste that we are producing, and the greenhouse gas emission and the likes. The S represents the social dimension of the SDG and its components such as employee development and labor practice, for companies, the product safety, and etc. And finally, the G represents the governance dimension of the ESG, such as board compensation, diversity, and internal policies in place to ensure good governance of ESG factors. So I have prepared further readings on each pillar. I won't go through it. Handouts will be distributed to you after the session. You can read later if you want to get more details on how each pillars are being applied in practice. Well, we have learned in the earlier slides what the definition of SDG is, but you may also have come across the acronym SDG. So what is SDG? Adopted by the United Nations and 193 member states, meaning 193 countries agreed in 2015 that these are the critical issues every nation face. Developed or least developed one, it's the same. It's just in varying levels or factors. SDGs are a set of goals with 169 targets and 247 indicators. Just like in school, we are measured in how we perform in different areas. Same with the SDGs. There are 169 targets, 247 indicators, and those are aimed to be achieved by 2030. It also serves as a blueprint to achieve sustainable development in areas of education, poverty eradication, economic growth, reducing inequalities, life on land and water, and partnerships that are necessary to achieve these goals. So these are partnerships coming from the governments, the private sector, the academia, which is very important, and also civil society with participation of the youth. That's why I'm happy to be giving this presentation to everyone today. And clearly, to date, less than 6 years before the expiration of the SDG, the target deadline, which is 2030, out of all the 247 indicators, the world is only about 15% on track on its achievement. So that means only 37 out of the 247 indicators are on track, and we are lagging on the rest. So clearly, there's so much catching up to do for governments, private sector, the academia, civil society, and that includes, more importantly, the youth in making positive change that we all want to see. So this one's for further reading. I won't delve much into this. We will share some examples on how this is some examples on how companies and organizations are using SDGs in management decisions. This is very similar to what you know as the ISO. It's a guiding framework on how to manage internal practices in companies and organizations to make sure that they're doing well and do good in the environment and society. So here in this slide, we will learn about how ESG and SDG interjects with each other. ESG and SDGs are very much closely related. As I have mentioned earlier, only 15% are currently on track to be achieved among the SDG indicators. So by understanding factors such as carbon emission reduction, improving work conditions, promoting diversity and inclusion, and that includes putting policies and programs in place to discourage racial, age, gender discrimination, and also by creating policies that will drive investments on critical sectors like energy. I know the region in Negros Occidental can very much relate on that. So we need more investments in the energy sector, health sector, road, and other transportation infrastructure. These will help advance progress. If not entirely achieve all the SDGs, it will somehow ensure good quality of life for all. So what are the benefits of having ESG and SDG knowledge, especially for you? For college students who will soon join the labor force, you will soon practice your chosen profession, whether through employment or whether you decide to put up your own business. The value proposition of SDG is first, and understanding ESG is first, is risk mitigation. There are some financial and reputational risk associated with ESG and the SDGs. There are physical and transition risks that will impact the balance sheet of your company. Say, for example, I think you can relate to this. One of you decided to put up your own sugarcane plantation in Bacolod. You need to understand the effects of climate change and the rising sea levels in areas where you would potentially put up your plantation, as it may result damage to agriculture due to flooding. And also in Negros, I know you have very beautiful beaches. Ever notice the changing shoreline, how the water extends to the beach over time? That is the result of rising sea levels. That has a huge impact on business and communities in the coastal areas. Next is the long-term value creation and access to capital. Investments all over the world are increasingly looking to invest in business that adopt sustainable business practice. If you are an investor, for example, who would want to put your money in business, you may, if you're an investor, for example, would you put your money in business that may be faced with penalties or maybe be foreclosed later on for doing unsustainable business practice, not doing proper waste disposal, for example, or maybe employing children in the workforce? That doesn't look good. Maybe not. We're not going to invest in that. ESG and SDG also build customer loyalty and trust. You would often see in product packaging made of recyclable materials or sourced from the cacao farmers of Bohol. Why do you think they have to indicate that? Because there is an increasing market who prefers to buy product that does not harm the environment, and businesses who practice sustainable sourcing, which in turn helps the local community. ESG and SDG also spurs innovation and efficiency. It drives new way of how we produce, consume, and dispose of things. Example, you are a manager, you become a manager of a big manufacturing company. By managing ESG factors, you would know how much electricity your facility consumes and how much is the equivalent carbon emission you're producing. You will then find ways how to make your electricity consumption efficiently, this will not only help you save on cost, but ultimately help the planet by producing less carbon emission. So understanding ESG and SDG will also help prepare you in the changing regulatory landscapes. Say, for example, I'm going to pick a name there, Kairon. So say, for example, Kairon, you're now working as a vice president of an electronics company, and then there's a new stringent policy on electronic waste or e-waste, because some of the e-waste contains hazardous elements and chemicals. Understanding the ESG factors in your organization will make it easier for you to adapt and think of ideas how your company can comply with the new regulations. So managing ESG factors also promote stakeholder and employee engagement. It is not only the agenda and concern of top management, but also of all its stakeholders and employees. So I hope we're clear on that. Why there's a study on ESG and why is it important, especially for the youth and students. So now that we have more or less some idea on what ESG is about, let's now talk about what it is not. So ESG practice is not the same as corporate social responsibility. And more importantly, these are not those what you see companies sponsored coastal cleanup drive with free t-shirt, free snacks, and take good photos and dispose the company's waste later on in the river. It's not that, okay? Maybe some of you are smiling, some of you can relate. Maybe they still keep the t-shirt. Just kidding. But it's not that, okay? And ESG management is also not only for large corporation. The UN estimates that about 90% of the business worldwide are classified as small and medium enterprise, the MSMEs. And collectively, MSMEs contributes to 50% of the global economy. So that is the value of engaging even the small and medium enterprise, because they hold a huge potential to drive the positive change in the private sector. And finally, it's not independent of each other. It's not like, yes, I'm paying my employees fairly, I do good in social factors, so I neglect the other environmental factors. It's not like that, because we live in a very complex world. So according to Newton, so every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So it's all connected and interrelated. So now we're going to do a deep dive on what E on ESG means. I will be providing you some examples and case studies on environmental factors. And I would like to start this section with a short clip, and I want you to really pay attention.
Major chaos this morning and delays for the day as high levels of water brought services to the Donovan says we should be praised for more of this. Forget summer days.
But the evidence in the record now is becoming clearer and clearer.
No longer assume the temperature of the world is stable.
American, that carbon footprint is about 16 tons of carbon emissions.
What about COP26? What is COP?
The potential threat to the surrounding natural environment, breaking frequency of the ocean becoming the UN is calling the world's first climate change fountain.
Scientists are correct in their fears.
The sure sign of climate change.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations.
I'm sorry.
No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future generations. No, that's because the more we take, the less there is for future
Even on our warming planet, there are reasons for hope.
We need to have the courage to try.
A lot more jobs created in the green economy.
Climate change is not the problem. Climate change is the expression of the problem.
The renewable energy technologies to fundamentally transform the energy system are at our disposal.
So how do we begin the process of reversing global warming?
We need innovation, and this kind of
I'm really
innovation.
glad people are starting to buy electric cars and
launched the largest tree plantation campaign.
It is now cheaper to build offshore wind farms.
To develop a climate-altering
by
crop.
continually reinvesting in our grasslands, we are looking down on
a critical moment that we cannot not be part of.
Enormous opportunity in agriculture.
We can become stubborn optimists.
26 is one of the most important diplomatic gatherings in
But humanity already knows what to do.
Can't do it overnight, but we can set that end date.
We've got a long way to go.
But there is momentum.
Roll up your sleeves and do it.
So you can see climate change knows no borders. Every country, developing ones, however we want to call it, rich or those emerging countries are not spared by the impacts of climate change. Now, let's bring the example further closer to home. You were just small kids then, but who can ever forget the devastating impacts of Typhoon Yolanda? It totaled to billions of infrastructure damage, billions of damage in infrastructure, 1.1 million homes were damaged, thousands were missing and injured, and sadly, thousands of deaths. And it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when we will see the next typhoon of this scale. So let's look further on what do we really mean by the environmental factors. So the United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP, coined this as the triple planetary crisis. Scary. When they start talking about those three major factors affecting the environment, so triple planetary crisis is first, climate change. So what is climate change? It's the long-term, gradual changes in average weather patterns that affects the Earth's climate. It takes decades or millions of years to see its effects. Well, in the Philippines, we only see two seasons. It's either wet season or dry season. But you will notice how every summer gets a little bit hotter than the previous one, or you see more severe typhoons or storms during the rainy season. And you would even notice that the areas that are used to be not being flooded are now starting to see flooding and affecting lives and damages to properties. But what is causing climate change? So there are two classifications of the cause of climate change. So first is anthropogenic. So that's from the root word anthrop, pertaining to man or human beings. So this means these are human-induced changes in chemical composition of the atmosphere. Some examples are the greenhouse gases we produce from the electricity consumption, our means of transportation, how the lands are being used and developed, are we putting subdivision on what used to be a protected area. So those are examples of anthropogenic, the human-induced changes in climate. So those examples of human activities that contribute to the worsening climate change issues. Next are the natural causes. So there are also natural causes that drives climate change. So these are the natural occurrences such as volcanic activity, tectonic movements, tidal shifts because of the gravitational forces exerted by the Earth to the moon. This causes high tide and low tide. So when someone asks you how many islands the Philippines has, the response should be, well, it depends on the gravitational forces that extends in the Earth. Latest count by the national mapping resource information, it is now at 7,641 in low tide and 7,100 during high tide. So it's either we're losing our islands because of high tide or it's being claimed by another country. Sorry, that's a different story. That's another topic. We don't want to discuss that on this session. But on the nature and biodiversity loss, this is the second factor affecting climate change. You can read through the definitions later on when we give out the handouts. But for now, I just need you to focus on the diagram. I need you to carefully observe how the ecosystem properties impacts one another. One practical example is structural alteration. For example, let me get a name. Rudalin. For example, Rudalin becomes a CEO of a land development company and decided to develop a subdivision in a once protected areas. So this protected area will lose thousands of trees and damage natural habitat that is home to several other species. And species in these areas will look for other habitat or host and sometimes share the same environment with humans. These cause zoonotic diseases, which means it's an illness that jumps from animals to humans. This can happen because humans and animals share the same environment. And sometimes the bacteria or the germs that makes animals sick can also make us sick. Examples of zoonotic disease include COVID-19, which is believed to have originated in animals, and diseases like flu and some types of food poisoning. And I think I don't have to explain much how COVID entirely changed how we do things. I know you're very well aware of that. So moving on, I prepared some further readings to explain more of the ecosystem properties and how its anthropogenic and natural activities affects nature and contributes to biodiversity loss. You can just read on the handouts that we're going to provide you later. And so now let's discuss the third planetary crisis identified by the United Nations, which is pollution and waste. This refers to the contaminants into the environment. Pollution refers to the contaminants in the environment that cause adverse effects, and waste refers to any substance or any object that its owner or producer discards or intends to discard, and then both pollution and waste both can have an adverse effect on water, soil, and the whole ecosystem. Let's take one, for example. Let's take air pollution. 6.5 million people die every year because of poor air quality. And the cause of this, some are anthropogenic in nature, like air pollution from industries, like like power plants, transport, and some of it are natural causes such as eruption of volcanoes, wildfires, and dust storms. Let's have another example. Let's take the marine and coastal pollution. About 4.8 to 12.7 million tons of plastic waste enters the ocean every year because of improper waste management. Some natural causes of these floods, landslide, and storm surge. But some are also anthropogenic in nature, like illegal dump sites, and how we, in our daily lives, how we dispose our personal waste, for example. So let me give you a case study. So these are documented case studies on how environmental factors impacts an organization and also the community and society. So Volkswagen, for example, was involved in a major scandal. I know you guys are familiar with this car manufacturer, Volkswagen. In the Philippines, we know this as the manufacturer of Coaching Cuba. Yes, that's the Volkswagen we're referring to. So they were involved in a major scandal known as the Dieselgate in 2015. It was revealed that the company had installed software in their diesel vehicles designed to manipulate emission tests. So the software detected when a vehicle was undergoing emission testing, it reduced the nitrogen oxide emission to comply with the standards. So because of the software, it alters the result. Um, in it shows lower lower emission test result. However, in real world condition, the vehicles are emitting pollutants at the levels far exceeding regulatory limits. The scandal led to legal repercussion, massive recalls of the car that was produced, and significant financial penalties for the company. Its impact, it affected 11 million cars that was sold to the public globally. And the harmful nitrogen oxide causes asthma and severe respiratory diseases to some people. So they faced $18 billion fine from the US government, and that does not include the compensation and consumer buybacks from the lawsuit. This also resulted to 30% decline in stock value. But there are also good examples of environmental stewardship. Of course, you know the San Enrique town in Negros Occidental, Kapitbahay, and the mangroves project in the area. It started in 1990s when San Enrique partnered with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, DNR, to start its mangrove rehabilitation program. So the municipality since then carried out with the planting and set aside annual budgets for the program every year. It is such a beautiful example of how everyone in the small town of San Enrique has had experience in mangroves rehabilitation. Through the years, the coastal life that residents share deepened their appreciation of mangroves' impact on their livelihood and safety. They realized that by putting up a good mangrove site, it is helping them on their daily lives in so many ways. So you'd see their ecotourism. It also prevents some further flooding in the areas, especially in their daily tasks, their livelihood. So before we move on to the good part, the 15-minute break, that's the good part, I would like to share this video with you. But you've seen the video and it's very moving. And I have so much faith in this generation, a generation of change makers. So I believe there's still hope to achieve climate stability, live in harmony with nature, and move towards a pollution-free planet. So are we all ready to move on to the good part? I'll turn over to Ms. Bushra. Ms. Bushra, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bushra, and thank you, Ms. Michelle. That's a lot of information, and I hope our students have been actively listening. Before we go on to the next part, and before I turn you over to Ms. Bushra, our Executive Director, Mr. James Donovan, is here. And please, sir, if we could hear a few words from you.
Thank you, Attorney Karina. Ms. Mick, Bushra, Miguel, the entire CIFAL team, congratulations. I just wanted to say, you know, for everyone at Silay Institute that's in attendance, thank you. And we all have a part to play. We are all sort of on this journey, and we believe that the Silay and CIFAL, by coming together, we can start to share some of these practices so that your generation, as you go forward, and are emerging leaders in your community, can take some of this knowledge and be the change maker that we're hoping. And really, you know, there's so much information with depth or breadth that is involved in ESG and sustainable development goals. Our goal is for all of you just to begin to understand that each and every one of us has a role in this future. So I don't want to stand in the way of the break, as Ms. Mick said, the good part. But I just wanted to say thank you. I wish I was there with you congratulations again with Silay's 99th year going into 100, Dr. Z. And please let me turn it back over to Bushra. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Jim. Thank you, Ms. Michelle, for this amazing first session. I have learned a lot, but it might be a little bit too difficult to absorb for our students. So I think we have a break for 15 minutes. It's well deserved. We can go grab a coffee, stretch our legs. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, please check out our social media pages so you can see all the great work that we're doing. And hopefully we'll see you all in 15 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's get quickly started. So in this next session, we'll talk more about the ESG and SDG linkages, and we'll see case studies and take a look at the voluntary and mandatory ESG reporting. But before we do that, Ms. Michelle is going to share the exciting results of our first word cloud. If everyone is ready, Ms. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we got some interesting initial thoughts on ESG before we started this session. It's really impressive. We see their environment, that's correct. Sustainable development, developmental awareness, better world, bucket list on future. That's really nice. But I also see their trees, climate. There's no right and wrong answers here. I also see their Mobile Legends. Fair enough. ESG can be a very good team name for Mobile Legends. I can relate to that. So let's see, after the session, we're going to have another word cloud on how it changes your perspective. But I can see here, it's really good and you have a really good understanding of what ESG and SDG means.
Yes.
So
Ms. Mick, I think Sir Jim has some comments also on the feedback from our students.
Hey, first, thank you everyone for their contribution. I'd like to just point out that whatever the word or the label that we are putting on this, I'd like you to be able to take away from this introduction to ESG. The reality is that we're all living in changing circumstances. For whatever the reason, we can go down the science route, or there's a whole lot of different, but we're living in changing circumstances that are going to dramatically impact our future. And to be, very blunt, we're handing off to the next generation more challenges than I think the world has ever faced. So we are trying to do our part in passing on as much education and awareness of the reality of the challenges of these changing circumstances. So while it's important to understand the broadness, but the reality is each and every one of us has a role to play. And whatever that is, whether it's in the local community or in the national, or even eventually some of you will be joining the international stage, I just want to let you know that somewhere out there you have a role to play, whether it's in water conservation or community leadership, or there's so many challenges for us to undertake. But with challenges, there are also opportunities. There's an opportunity for each and every one of you to take that leadership and create a value proposition. And that's really what we're trying to give you some initial awareness of, that while the world is filled with these challenges, each and every one of you has the capability to make a difference. And with that, I will turn it back over. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Jim. So we're now going to proceed with the next half of the session. So can you all see the deep dive on ESG? Thank you. So let's now proceed on the next part of the webinar, which is deep dive on the S factor of ESG, which means social factors. So social factors focus on the organization's relationship with its employees, customers, suppliers, and the community where it operates. Some example of social factors include human capital management on how the organization ensures diverse and inclusive workers without discrimination. Some examples are in product safety, which means the measures and practices of the organization undertakes does not do harm in people and the environment on the manner they produce, they source, manufacture, distribute, and consume the raw materials without causing harm to consumers and general public. Social factors, it also means that it complies with human rights and labor practices, sourced its product responsibly, and engage with its community to address issues and solve problems to achieve common goals. So these are another practical set of how social factors in companies and organization are. So first is in its employees, on how they conduct recruitment, how they engage employees and retain them. For customers, this includes product safety, how the company innovate its products and service delivery to make it accessible for consumers, and how to innovate, delivering the best quality at the best price possible. So social factors, as you can see here, also represent social factors also represent engagement with community in their sourcing, impact of their companies, their production sites, and labor. So although not the community is not directly employed within the company, positive or negative impact to community becomes the business license to operate their business within the community. Maybe you were very young, but maybe you have come across, and this reminds me of the Mark Copper mining story in Marinduque. Mark Copper Mining began its operations in 1969, so very long time ago. And on March of 1996, a fracture in the drainage tunnel of Mark Copper Mining spilled more than 1.6 million cubic meters of toxic mine tailings, flooding the villages and causing poisoning of the Buwak River in Marinduque. This caused the river and catch fish. Now, the river and the environment they are in are filled with toxic substance. This disaster not only caused the company to close, years later, one resident suffers from skin irritation, fatigue, and body pains. Tests done in 2017 detected harmful substance in her blood, and she's not alone. Adults and children in towns of Marinduque still live with the effects of the disaster that happened 29 years ago. So the effects has been damaging them for it's being felt even up to this date. So let's take these two case studies as an example. There has been a nice Nike scandal sweatshop in some years ago. This refers to the controversies and criticism surrounding the labor practices of Nike's contracted factories in very early 1990s and 2000. Nike being a major global sportswear and athletic shoe company, you're very familiar with that, faced allegations related to poor working conditions, low wages, and other labor rights violation in some of its subcontracted overseas factories. This resulted to loss of revenue and advertising opportunities for the company. On the other hand, Unilever's model, let's take the Unilever's case, for example. It revolves around the concept of sustainable living and inclusive business practices. The company aims to address social and environmental challenges while simultaneously tapping to untapped markets. They continuously improve product access on their hygiene and personal products like shampoo, laundry soap, and toothpaste. To be able to reach to other market segments, they came up with their products being sold in sachet. So that allows even the local sari store with a very small capital to carry their products that in turn improve consumer access to essential products. So consumers don't have to spend a lot of money in getting this necessary and essential products, they can buy it in sachets. So that's very common on how we see these products in the market in the Philippines. So here now we move on to the last pillar of ESG, which is the governance factor. So governance refers to the actions and policies and process and norms in a company or organization and how decisions are being implemented. It means ensuring diversity, quality and effectiveness of the organization, and how fast and effective they can make decisions to increase the transparency and accountability. And policies are done within the company to ensure that the earlier discussed topics of environment and social factors are being measured and managed properly. So here's just some examples of how a company can put certain controls in place in the organization to ensure good governance. So that includes policies on compensation and remuneration. And that also includes creating codes of conduct and policies and process in place for risk and crisis management and so on. So I won't delve much into this. We'll give you some reading materials. So let me give you one case, popular case studies on some governance factor impacts. So the Enron scandal was one of the most infamous corporate fraud cases in history, involving manipulation of financial statements. So our business program students would understand. So that happened in Enron. So there's manipulation of the financial statements to conceal the company's financial losses, and also to inflate its profits, making it appear as if they are profitable. So naturally, shareholders kept coming in, investing money to the company, thinking that they will generate huge returns on their investment, until a whistleblower exposes suspicions about the company's accounting practices. This triggered internal and external investigations. Media is already involved, and a lot of sectors in the society are calling for the truth to be told. This brought the company's fraudulent activities to light. So its impacts, shareholders lost $74 billion, and investors lost their retirement account, and many employees lost their jobs. Many people lost their life savings as a result of the company's bankruptcy. Investors and pension funds also suffered significant financial losses. But there are also some inspiring good governance practices. One example, this is the Securities and Exchange Commission of the Philippines. So this photo is taken from the United Nations Commerce and Trade Awards. I see Sir Jim there smiling in the background picture. So this is the Securities and Exchange Commission of the Philippines. They've been awarded by UNCTAD for promoting sustainability reporting for the publicly listed companies in the Philippines. So this does not only trigger companies to measure and manage sustainability performance, but the data that's being gathered by the Securities and Exchange Commission assists government in monitoring the SDG needs and the actions needed for the Philippines. So now we move on to the voluntary and mandatory reporting of ESG performance. So there are two types of ESG performance on how it's being monitored and disclosed. Disclosed meaning how it's being reported. So one is mandatory reporting, and then the other is the voluntary reporting. So for mandatory reporting, here, companies are legally obliged to disclose certain ESG information, such as those required by the government or their certain stock exchanges where their companies are listed. So regulatory bodies, either it's the government or their stock exchanges, may set specific guidelines and reporting frameworks that companies may follow. Later on, we'll be sharing you a set of standards and guidelines. If you want to look at it, feel free to do so. You can do your own research as well. And next is voluntary ESG reporting. So on the voluntary reporting, companies choose to disclose ESG information on their own initiative without being legally required to do so. They may follow some certain guidelines, the common frameworks such as the Global Reporting Initiative or the Sustainability Accounting Standards Boards. But those are not mandatory, but they know and understand the value of reporting and such. So here are some examples of the common best practice standards, frameworks, and indices. So there's one from the United Nations, which is the UN SDGs that you've seen earlier. And then there's also a UN Global Compact standards and frameworks. Here, organizations are required to disclose areas in their labor, the environment, and governance. So those are some common goals and principles. There is also Carbon Disclosure Project, which focuses more on the company's carbon emissions. Those are also being reported. There's also the Carbon Disclosure Standards Boards and the TCFD. TCFD which means Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. So aside from doing disclosure on the financial performance, even those non-financial metrics is being reported by the company. So these are just some common examples. I won't go through it one by one, but we'll share the slides and feel free to do your own research if you're interested. There's also the science-based targets, wherein companies commit to having zero emissions at a certain year. They commit that by doing certain practices in their organization to minimize or at least minimize their carbon emissions. There's also the GRESB, known as Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark. So those are more for the real estate industry, and the Dow Jones Sustainability Indices. So there's so many. Before we close this lecture, I didn't realize it's going to be that fast. We will proceed with the good part later, which is the Q&A. If you have other questions, but I want to leave you with this. CIFAL commends our ESG lecture series on youth and students because we have so much trust in this generation, and we hope that this lecture will help you prepare to navigate a complex, interconnected world, make informed decisions on how you can contribute to sustainable development, and align your academic and soon professional pursuits with ethical and responsible practices. And I personally believe that this generation's energy, creativity, and passion will drive innovations and actions that brings positive change. So again, I'm Michelle Tan. You can reach me anytime if you have any further questions. And it's my pleasure to be discussing this relevant topic with you today. So I'll now hand over the floor to Attorney Karina or Ms. Bushra.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle, for that very insightful and comprehensive introductory course on ESG and the SDGs. We especially appreciate your impactful examples and case studies that you shared with us. Well, there's so much more to learn about this very important topic. We hope that, dear students, that you have at least captured the basic principles of ESG and how this affects our daily lives and your future, and more importantly, your role as future leaders in sustainable development. At the start of the presentation, we asked you to answer the word cloud, and we showed you your answers. You did a very good job. You have a very good concept of ESG. But we ask you again to answer the same question now, this time taking into consideration the learnings we just gained from the presentation. So please scan the QR code and answer the question. We can see our Silay students seated in the hall, in the classroom. So please say hello, everyone. I hope you're answering the poll and be ready for more survey questions later.
Just getting our answers ready. All right, we're ready.
Okay, so we see very interesting perspective. And we see their take action on climate change, governance. Those are very beautiful words, and those are what we expect from this generation. And just like what Sir Jim said earlier, everyone has some role to play on environmental stewardship, how we do our social contract with the environment and society that we all live in. So, Sir Jim, would you like to give a comment on the very good perspective of our Silay students?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mick. Yes, absolutely. I appreciate everybody's input. I guess I would like to leave you with sort of a generational perspective. In my generation and maybe some of the teachers' generations, we were told to sort of go forth and, go forth and conquer, and, the world is your oyster, meaning, effectively there was limitless resources. And we are handing you a generational challenge, and frankly, really a big challenge, that you need to go forth and create a value with resource constraints. And you're going to need to leverage all sorts of tools besides knowledge and technology to create value with less, and to do it in the constraints of the global boundaries of that we only have so much fresh water, we only have so much capability of what this God's gift of earth has given us. So your challenge that we're passing to you, for better or for worse, is now you have to do more with less. And ESG is just the beginning of this journey. All of this is going to contribute, or your life, whatever industry that you're going to be in or participate, civil society or government, this is going to affect your lives. And we hope to be part of some small initial learnings of that you can be an agent of change, whatever part of your community that you is going to be your chosen path. So we really appreciate the time and your energy and your input to take up this opportunity of change. So thank you very much. And we all need you to bring new solutions to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Jim. I would also like to call on Ma'am Yai for her insight and perspective on how we on this session, and how our Silay students reacted to the session. Ma'am Yai, the floor is yours.
Faculty and staff, and most of all our precious resources, our students, to understand what ESG is all about. But I'd like to go back to some points in your presentation, Ms. Mick, and one of them being the example that you cited in San Enrique in Negros Occidental. Just to let you know and to share, this is one initiative that has been going on for a couple of years, longer even, and it's an adopted community that we have in Silay, also located in Negros Occidental. where we do conduct on a yearly basis the planting of mangroves, because we all understand that these mangroves are very important not only for the environment but also for the livelihood of the fisher folks who live nearby, and that by planting these mangroves we help prevent the erosion of the area. And in the case of Silay and the students who help participate in the planting of these mangroves, it has expanded to other communities, member communities of Silay, through volunteers who want to participate with the school. And it's a pride of Silay Institute and the student volunteers that the expansion of communities and even foreign students who join us in planting of these mangroves is part of ESG. And this is just what I wanted to share, that we are doing something that is aligned with ESG, and glad for the students to be aware of this initiative is part of a global move in doing our part for change to happen. And again, I affirm and support the statements of Sir Jim that this is generational, and this is the time for Silay Institute and the students to participate as the generation who will move towards working on making change happen to support ESG and the various SDG programs of the United Nations. And that's it from my part, Ms. Mick. And of course, I welcome the other participants who are not shy to share their experience and what they have learned this afternoon in this ESG introduction. Thank you so much, Ms. Mick and the CIFAL group.
Thank you, Ma'am Yai. And we really love to receive photos of how you're doing the initiative and how Silay Institute are taking part of that very beautiful project. I think that's a very good example that's being done in the Philippines that we can replicate somewhere else. Since we're going to have this ESG presentation in other campuses and other universities, we'd like to highlight what you're doing in Silay to be an example and best practice on how it should be done. And that's very beautiful. Thank you, Ma'am Yai. So maybe I'll hand over the floor to Attorney Karina.
Thank you, Ms. Mick. Thank you, Ma'am Yai, and thank you, Sir Jim, for your insights on the presentation and, of course, the feedback from our students. It's really great that Silay Institute is doing that mangrove project, and we hope that we see more of these initiatives in the future. I'm sure our students still have a lot of comments, observations, and questions on the presentation. So we will give you a chance to raise these questions and comments later on. And as mentioned in the house rules, please use the raise hand button. We have already been receiving questions in our chat box and sent to us directly. But before we proceed to that, we would like to pose some questions. And please go through them. These are some polls, and we would like to receive your feedback. So Miguel, kindly flash the questions. You may answer the poll questions directly on your screen. Okay, we encourage everyone to continue to answer the questions so we could have a sense of how you appreciate this webinar today. Please note also that for your participation in today's webinar, you will be receiving certificates of participation from CIFAL Lebanon and UNITAR. This will be coursed through Silay Institute. So thank you for that, and I hope you will be excited to receive your certificates. Please note also that the materials and these survey questions will be sent to you also by Silay Institute, and we hope to receive feedback. There you go. These are the results of our survey. If we go through them one by one, first question, do you think it is important to learn about ESG and SDGs as a student? And great job, 100% said yes. So thank you for that. The next question, do you see yourself practicing ESG for your future profession? And 91% said yes. So more than great majority will be future SDG and ESG leaders and innovators. So 12%, you still have a chance to change your mind. Finally, how effectively do you think businesses or organizations in your region are applying good ESG practices? So it's good to hear. A lot find, 44% find that businesses in their region are doing an effective job. 28% good job, 21 acceptable, and yes, there are still, I'm sure, some businesses who are still not up to speed with ESG and SDG practices. So there's still a lot of work to be done. So thank you for that great participation. Yes, sir.
Attorney Karina, could I jump in just for a second? I really just want to make a note because this last question, I want to leave everyone with an understanding that we have a long way to go in the private sector and the governmental side. And to be very frank, there is a certain amount of greenwashing that takes place where people are saying that they're doing good things, or they say that, you know, they're putting a wrapper around. So for your generation, for the emerging practitioners of ESG that are attending, I think it's on all of us to ask deeper questions. Is it really being impactful? Is what they're saying equal to what they're doing? Because I really think, you know, companies might engage in sort of the marketing aspect of it to get some benefit, but the reality, all of us need to push through the marketing side of it and ask really what changes are they having. If it's a company that's, let's say, using water in their production, you know, are they using it in a responsible way? How much is it impacting the local community? Are they using recycled plastic, or are they using virgin? So I just want to leave it on you that we all have a role to play to push past the current business models and evolve more thoughtful, responsible business models in the future. So I would challenge the number 3 question that, frankly, I think we're really just at the beginning of developing new business models, and it's all on you to hold your purchases, the people you deal with, the companies you engage with, responsible for their choices. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sir Jim. And yes, we have a big role. We are responsible in directing these businesses to engage in sustainable business practices. So we come to the close of our program. We would like to hear again some closing remarks from our executive director. If we can play the video, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of CIFAL Lebanon team, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Silay Institute for spearheading this collaborative effort to organize an insightful and impactful webinar on the introduction of environment, social, and governance, ESG and SDGs. We are truly honored to have the opportunity to engage with such a diverse and dedicated group of attendees. Your participation and enthusiasm have undoubtedly enriched the discussions and contributed to the success of this webinar. As we navigate the complexities of our local communities, national and international landscapes, the importance of ESG principles and the pursuit of sustainable development goals cannot be overstated. It is only going to be through our collective actions of each and every one of us and the shared knowledge we can pave the way for a more sustainable and inclusive future. We extend our deepest appreciation to each and every one of you for your time, commitment, and valuable contributions. Let us carry the insight gained from this webinar into our respective communities where we can influence driving positive change and fostering a culture of responsibility and sustainability. We look forward to future collaborations and endeavors to promote a shared vision of a better, more sustainable world. Thank you again to the Silay Institute, CIFAL Lebanon, and to all of our participants, making this webinar a resounding success. Wishing all of you continued successes in all of your endeavors and to make a lasting impact in our world together. God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those remarks. And I see that we're still very actively participating in the webinar, and we received a lot of questions on the presentation. Since we still have time, we will give time to entertain these questions. Ms. Bushra, if you can read the first question that we received, and we will ask Sir Jim and Ms. Mick to give their comments on these.
Okay, I've already received a few questions. So the first one would be, are ESG regulations the same across regions and countries?
Okay, maybe I'll take that first. It's a very good question. The answer is no. ESG regulation and adoption is not the same in every region or country. It differs. It even differs by industry, how companies are adopting ESG and SDG practices. ESG regulation and practices are most often than not has a different enforcement mechanism depending on the country's ecological makeup, depending on their vulnerability to climate impacts, depending on the cultural factors. And lastly, it is often aligned with the priorities of their respective national and local governments. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that answer. And our next question would be, what challenges do companies face when measuring and reporting on ESG factors? And I think Sir Jim can help us with this question.
All right, thank you, Versa. Challenging question. Generally, people say that the common issues are a lack of standardized metrics. There is quite a lot of, there's frankly an alphabet soup of various standards out there in the world. We do need more consistent reporting frameworks. It's not unsimilar to taxes. Every country has a different taxation system. But at the end of the day, we need to gather data and make decisions. So while the common problem is knowing where and when, how to start, then comes the problem of, how do you source the data? At the end of the day, data is either lacking. It's sort of an ocean. You're either, you have too much data or you're a desert. You don't have enough. But there is a commitment that's coming from many different places, from the bottom up and the top down, to measure and manage and take action on ESG impacts. And frankly, it's because everybody is part of somebody's supply chain. So if you're selling something to a multinational, they're now requiring embedded carbon calculations in that journey. So while companies can face challenges in deciding between, effectively short-term profit and long-term sustainability, the reality is this is being pushed through the supply chain globally. And we see the need for the bigger picture and to invest in solid data management systems that will help people and governments and companies make better decisions. The reporting standards are catching up with the market needs. And to be very frank, I think in your generation, it will just be a given that everyone will know the carbon footprint of a product or a service. It will just be like the ingredients on the back of a can of soup. It is happening in some aspects, but it needs to happen a lot more. And those, while they are challenges, in reality, this is the way forward. It's not going backwards. So the quicker people can companies can embrace this, the more it can create a competitive advantage for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Jim. And we have one more question. Either Ms. Mick or Sir Jim, you can take this. How can students contribute to or engage with initiatives within their academic programs?
I can grab that one. It's essential to learn SDGs because effectively, no pun intended, they are going to become the new ABCs of how to operate and understand that the world and the resources that we have to live within. So SDGs and ESG can pave the way for a sustainable future, but it's also good business. It's smart business. You taking the first steps of learning about this will make you a more valued resource wherever you go. If you're going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to the corporate world or you're going to government, having a basic understanding of this is going to be a value proposition. So I think you're all taking the first step, advocating for sustainability across in education, asking hard questions. Are we doing enough in Silay? I absolutely think we can do more. Asking our local community, are we doing enough there? We can do more. So that's what I mean by the promotion of sustainable practices on the campus, within our community, and continually to engage. What can we do to challenge the business models of yesterday and to be able to develop the future that you want and you deserve, but you absolutely need to be part of that journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question. This question is for Ms. Michelle. What is the best way to communicate ESG performance to investors, customers, and other stakeholders?
Thank you. So in the earlier presentation, we've seen the common frameworks and guidelines for disclosure, and different disclosures would have different key performance indicators. So they grade each factors differently. But ultimately, the goal is to provide a common language that investors, customers, and stakeholders would understand. So we will share the long list of those frameworks. We'd be happy to share more information on that, and we'll share our contact details. If you have any further questions on the frameworks, we'd be happy to address those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a lot of questions from our audience. So thank you very much for your active participation. So now we officially come to a close. We remind everyone that there will be a survey sent to you through Silay Institute. This is our feedback form. So we appreciate if you could answer the survey form. Kindly scan the QR code so that we can learn from your feedback and be better in our future webinars and presentations. We thank you again, the CIFAL Lebanon team, Bushra, Miguel, Ms. Mick, of course, Sir Jim, Ma'am Yai, and of course, the Silay Institute team, Dr. Zamora, Ma'am Yai, and the rest of the students of Silay Institute. We cannot end the program without a photo opportunity. So we encourage everyone to turn on their videos, please, so we can see everyone. And we ask Miguel to assist us in doing a photo opportunity with everyone.
We'll just wait for everyone to turn on their cameras.
Oh, this is great. Hello, everyone. So Miguel will direct the photo opportunity for screens. So maintain those beautiful smiles.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Next. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. And last. All good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Z.
Please be on the
Thank you so
lookout
much,
for
sir.
the survey.